Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Boston, an autumn morning. Leaves are slowly falling from the trees in the courtyard of Westfield Academy, casting colorful shadows on the pavement. Inside the school's imposing walls, the atmosphere is stifling. In the second-floor history room, the students are slowly settling in, whispering among themselves. In the center, a 15-year-old black boy, Jason King, adjusts his backpack and sits down at his desk. Silent but attentive, he observes his surroundings with calm curiosity. Jason is a brilliant student, always prepared, but discreet. He knows how to keep a low profile when the stares are heavy, but today he feels an unusual tension. The professor, Mr. William Bradford, enters the room with a confident stride and a stern look. A white man in his 50s, known for his arrogance and demands, he never hides his contempt for what he considers weak answers. Today, his mood seems even darker. As the students open their textbooks and take notes, Jason tentatively raises his hand to ask a question about a complex historical passage. But the teacher, noticing this, frowns. He approaches Jason and, without even waiting for an answer, says, "Jason, really, how can you even ask that kind of question?" A heavy silence fell over the classroom. The other students exchanged worried glances. Jason felt his heart race, but he remained motionless, his fists lightly clenched on the desk. Little did he know that this simple moment would mark the beginning of a conflict that would reveal truths far greater than this classroom. Far away, in a bustling city, David King, Jason's father, Jason, continues his business. A powerful lawyer and respected philanthropist, he is unaware that his son will soon be publicly humiliated by a man who knows neither the strength nor the dignity of the King family. The history class progressed at a monotonous pace, the pages of the textbooks turning with a steady creak. Mr. Bradford, his eyes squinting behind his glasses, paced the central aisle of the room, casting critical glances at the students. He stopped in front of Jason King, who was attentively reading a passage on civil rights in the United States. In a dry and authoritative voice, Bradford asked, "Jason, can you tell me who led the civil rights movement in the 1960s? Jason, sure of his answer, raised his hand and calmly replied, "Several figures marked this period, sir. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X." A heavy silence fell over the class. Jason continued, briefly detailing everyone's contributions. But Mr. Bradford, flushed with anger, interrupted him. "Stop. You don't understand the real meaning of what I'm asking. How can you dare to speak like that in front of everyone?" Jason's eyes lowered for a moment, but he took a deep breath and replied with dignity. "Sir, I think I understand the question. If my answer is incorrect, I am willing to learn." The class was frozen. Some students held their breath, others murmured among themselves. But Mr. Bradford didn't care. He raised his voice, almost shouting, "Jason, you should know that some things are beyond your comprehension." A stifled laugh rippled through a few rows, but Jason remained motionless, his hands clenched on his desk. His face betrayed suppressed anger, mixed with the pain of being humiliated in front of his classmates. As the professor continued his walk down the aisle, Jason felt the weight of stares on him, some sympathetic, others tinged with contempt. But beneath the humiliation, a thought was brewing in his mind: one day, this injustice would be revealed, and the truth would reveal the masks. The end of class bell rang faintly in the hallway, but in the history room, an invisible tension persisted. Jason King, still sitting at his desk, felt the weight of his classmates' stares. Some looked down, uneasy, others whispered among themselves, hesitant to speak. Mr. Bradford, flushed with anger and irritated by what he considered a challenge to his authority, continued his harassment. "And you, Jason, do you really think you can debate me? You have no idea what it means to understand history." Jason, clenching his fists on the cold wood of his desk, replied calmly, "Sir, I respect your opinion, but I think we can learn without putting others down." The professor burst into a dry, sarcastic laugh. "Learn? From you? It's laughable. A wave of murmurs ran through the class. One of the classmates tentatively tried to support Jason. "Sir, he's right, there's no need to." But Bradford raised his hand to cut him off, his sharp gaze a silent warning. Silence. Jason felt a lump in his throat, but instead of being intimidated, he raised his head, his eyes locking with the professor's. He couldn't change the situation, but he refused to give in to fear. After a few minutes, the bell rang again, signaling break. The students quickly rose, some eager to flee, others hesitant. Jason calmly packed his things and left the room, his heart heavy but his mind clear. He knew this moment would remain etched in his memory, and that the truth would eventually come out. In the school's bustling hallways, Jason felt the gaze of some students following his every step, some with respect, others with curiosity. But deep down, he was certain of one thing: he wasn't alone. And soon, this humiliation would take a turn no teacher could have imagined. That evening, in Jason's quiet bedroom, the lamps cast a soft light on his scattered books. The 15-year-old black boy sat at his desk, his phone clutched in his hands. The humiliation of the day still weighed heavily on his shoulders. After a moment of silence, Jason took a deep breath and sent a message to his father, David King. "Dad, today in class, Mr. Bradford humiliated me in front of everyone. He put me down and called me names. I don't know what to do." A few minutes later, his phone vibrated. It was David. "Jason, I'm proud of you for your patience and calm. Don't worry. We'll work this out, but in a way that respects your dignity and that of your family." Jason sensed a glimmer of hope. His father, a renowned lawyer and nationally respected philanthropist, understood the intricacies of power and justice. But more than his power, David had always taught Jason the importance of dignity and courage in the face of injustice. The next morning, Jason arrived at school with newfound confidence. He knew things were about to change. Meanwhile, David King discreetly contacted the principal and arranged a meeting with Mr. Bradford. Calmly but firmly, he explained the incident and the need to treat this kind of behavior seriously. The professor, surprised, felt a pressure he had never experienced before. He knew nothing of the stature of the King family or David's influence. Jason, for his part, still didn't know the details of what his father was planning. But in his heart, he knew a turning point was imminent. This simple humiliation in a history room would set off a chain of events that would not only expose Mr. Bradford's racist behavior, but also remind everyone that dignity and respect are never negotiable. The next morning, David King entered Westfield Academy with a presence that commanded respect. The corridors were bustling with students hurrying, but several teachers stepped aside, recognizing the influential man who walked with a firm, calm step. David asked to see the principal in his office. After a few formal exchanges, he was led to the staff room where Mr. Bradford was correcting copies, thinking that everything was under control. The professor looked up, surprised to see David King. His reaction changed from arrogance to nervousness when he realized who was standing before him. David spoke in a measured but sharp voice. "Mr. Bradford, I am Jason King's father. My son told me what happened yesterday in class, and I think you have forgotten some basic rules, namely respect and dignity for your students." Bradford tried to mask his discomfort with a curt reply. "Sir, it was just a lesson to show Jason that he needs to stay focused on his studies." David smiled slightly, but his gaze remained implacable. A lesson never requires public humiliation or racist innuendo. You have crossed the line. You must understand that your actions have consequences, and that my son deserves respect and protection. Bradford felt his face flush, unable to come up with a satisfactory answer. He realized that the man in front of him was not only influential, but also possessed of a calm and relentless determination. David continued, looking at the professor gravely. "You will apologize to Jason and acknowledge your behavior. And rest assured that the school will take all necessary steps to ensure this never happens again." The silence that followed was heavy. The colleagues in the room sensed David King's natural authority and understood that Bradford had just lost all control. That day, Jason, discreetly observing the scene through the corridors, felt an immense relief. He understood that the humiliation he had suffered would become a lesson for everyone. Respect and dignity are never optional, and even the most arrogant attitudes can be confronted with truth and justice. The next day, word of David King's intervention had already spread throughout the school. Students whispered in the hallways, some impressed, others curious to see what would happen next. Jason, calm but attentive, felt a new energy around him. The power of truth was beginning to manifest. In the history room, Mr. Bradford he entered with a tense posture. He knew that his colleagues and students were informed of the incident. Every glance at him seemed to judge him, every whisper reinforced the weight of his guilt. The principal spoke to the class. Mr. Bradford, due to recent events, you will acknowledge to your students that your behavior toward Jason King was unacceptable. Bradford, hesitant, looked down and whispered. Jason. I apologize for my words yesterday. Jason, sitting upright, his gaze calm but penetrating, answered softly. Thank you, sir. That's all I asked. The class was silent for a few moments, then some students clapped timidly. The tension that had been building since the day before dissipated, replaced by a mixture of respect and admiration for Jason. Bradford, humiliated and aware of his own arrogance, felt for the first time the reality of his actions. This was no longer just a classroom, it was a reminder that his prejudices and unfair behavior had visible consequences. As he left the classroom, Jason passed several students smiling at him, some whispering apologies for their own laughter or teasing the day before. He realized that this moment wasn't just about him, but also served as a lesson for his classmates. No one is above respect and dignity. In the principal's office, David King received a discreet call. The school confirmed that an official meeting was going to be held to address Mr. Bradford's behavior. Justice was not just moral, it was going to become administrative and visible to all. This reversal marked the beginning of a profound change. Jason now knew that his patience and calm had paid off, and that the truth, when defended with courage, always prevails. A few days after the incident, Westfield Academy was immersed in a new atmosphere. The hallways and classrooms seemed quieter, but charged with an energy of respect and vigilance. The story of Jason King and the public humiliation had circulated, not as a scandal, but as an example of courage and dignity. The principal called a special assembly for all staff and students. In the large auditorium, the gazes were attentive and silent. The director spoke. Dear students and teachers, a recent incident has shown us that respect and dignity are never optional. What Jason King experienced reminds us that every person deserves to be treated fairly, regardless of their appearance or background. The students listened, some inspired, others surprised to see a teacher confronted with his own mistakes. Jason, sitting in the front row, felt a quiet pride fill him. It was no longer just him who had been defended, it was a lesson for the whole school. In the staff room, Mr. Bradford, still red with embarrassment, followed the session in silence. The looks of his colleagues were heavy with judgment. He finally understood that his behavior was not just a personal error, he had failed in his role as a model and educator. David King, although not physically present, had played a key role in this change. The school began implementing diversity and respect awareness programs, and Jason was invited to share his experience in discussions with his classmates. For Jason, the lesson was clear: patience, courage, and dignity are more powerful weapons than humiliation or fear. His classmates began to look at him differently, no longer as a mere student, but as an example of quiet strength and resilience. Thus, what had begun as a painful moment became a catalyst for change. The entire school understood that racist or degrading acts never go unpunished, and that the truth always prevails, even in the most delicate situations. A few weeks after the incident, Jason King walked the halls of Westfield Academy with a newfound confidence. The looks he received had changed, some held admiration, others silent respect. The mockery and condescending whispers of yesteryear had given way to signs of recognition and support. In the history classroom, Mr. Bradford clumsily tried to regain his authority, but every word he spoke was now filtered by the memory of his own mistakes. Jason, sitting at his desk, followed the lesson with calm and concentration, aware of his inner strength. Several comrades came timidly to congratulate him or to speak to him. Jason. I'm sorry about what happened. You were really brave. Jason smiled, answering modestly. Thank you. This isn't just for me, this is for all of us. In the courtyard, some students who had previously hesitated to defend him began to take a stand against the injustices they encountered, inspired by his dignity and patience. Jason understood then that it was not only his reputation that had been restored, but that his example was serving to change the culture around him. At home, his father, David King, congratulated him for his courage. Jason, you have shown that even in the face of humiliation and injustice, remaining dignified and calm is a victory in itself. I am proud of you. Jason felt an immense weight lifted from his shoulders. He realized that true strength came not from anger or revenge, but from the ability to remain true to one's values, even when everything seemed against him. This moment marked the beginning of a new era for Jason. He was no longer just the humiliated student, but a symbol of resilience, dignity, and justice within his school. The newfound pride was not just personal, it was collective, and it now inspired everyone around him. At Westfield Academy, the weeks following the Jason King incident saw a new atmosphere emerge. Both staff and students seemed more aware of the importance of respect and dignity. Jason's public humiliation had become a living example of what should never be tolerated. The principal announced the establishment of diversity and inclusion awareness programs, inviting speakers, organizing workshops and open discussions. Jason was asked to share his experience with his classmates, sharing his feelings and how he had maintained his dignity despite the insults. In the hallways, attitudes were slowly but surely changing. Students began to stand up for those who were being bullied or subjected to injustice. The climate of fear and silence was giving way to a culture of support and collective responsibility. Mr. Bradford, still present at the school, followed these programs with visible discomfort. His position had been weakened, and he understood that he now needed to be thoughtful and humble. His interactions with students and staff became more respectful, less authoritarian, and more attentive. For Jason, the change wasn't limited to his own experience. He saw that his actions and patience had inspired his comrades to act with courage. Injustices, once tolerated or ignored, were now confronted by a community willing to stand up for respect and fairness. At home, David King looked at his son with pride. You've turned a humiliation into a lesson for everyone, Jason. What you've accomplished is beyond what you could imagine. Jason smiled, realizing that the real victory wasn't just personal. It was a victory for all those who had been silenced by fear or discrimination. With this change, Westfield Academy became a place where fairness and respect finally had a lasting place. A few weeks later, the Westfield Academy School Board called a special meeting to discuss Mr. Bradford's behavior. This time, the room was full. Teachers, students, and parents were present. The incident involving Jason King had attracted the attention of the entire educational community. David King, Jason's father, was invited to speak as a witness to injustice and a defender of his son's dignity. His calm but firm speech resonated in the room. What happened in that classroom was not only an affront to my son, but a fundamental breach of respect and educational responsibility. Every teacher must understand that humiliation and racism have no place in a school. Jason, sitting beside his father, felt a mixture of pride and relief. The students, witnessing the scene, realized that truth and justice could prevail, even in the face of an authoritarian and influential adult. The principal then spoke. After reviewing the facts and testimony, we have decided that Mr. Bradford will complete a mandatory diversity and inclusion training program and will issue a formal apology to Jason and the entire class. Mr. Bradford, visibly humiliated, bowed his head and whispered, Jason, I'm sorry for what I put you through. This time, there was no anger or provocation in his words, only an acknowledgement of his fault. For Jason, this reaction marked moral revenge. The man who had humiliated him had been confronted with the truth, and his dignity had been restored. The students applauded softly, some whispering admiring comments toward Jason. The message was clear: patience, dignity, and courage can turn an injustice into a lesson for all. As he left, Jason met Mr. Bradford's gaze. He felt neither vengeance nor hatred, only quiet satisfaction. The moral was simple but powerful: True strength lies in respecting oneself and others, and unjust acts always end up being exposed. A few days after the school board meeting, Westfield Academy had a different atmosphere. The hallways were bustling, but the air was now thick with respect and mutual care. Students spoke to one another with more consideration, and teachers were more vigilant in maintaining a fair and inclusive environment. Jason King walked confidently around the courtyard, aware of the impact of his courage and patience. His classmates greeted him differently, with admiration and respect. He understood that the real victory was not only personal, but collective. He had helped transform his school. At home, David King took his son in his arms, a smile of pride lighting up his face. "Jason, you have shown that even in the face of humiliation and injustice, remaining dignified and patient is the greatest strength. Thanks to you, many have learned the meaning of respect." Jason smiled, realizing that his experience had extended beyond the walls of the history room. He had not only regained his dignity, but he had also inspired an entire community. The awareness programs, open discussions, and changes in behavior around him were all proof that moral justice had triumphed. As for Mr. Bradford, he pursued his career with a new outlook on his responsibilities. His position had been weakened, but he had learned, through humiliation and confrontation, that no title or authority justifies demeaning another human being. For Jason, this experience became a life lesson. True strength lies in courage, patience, and dignity. His story became a symbol, reminding everyone that injustices, no matter how visible or invisible, always eventually meet the truth. So, at that Boston school, pain and humiliation gave way to resilience, respect, and inspiration. Jason King was no longer just a student, he had become a living example of justice, courage, and newfound pride.